The dawn over the Blackwater was as pale as watered milk, the faint gleam of first light lapping at the moss-green ramparts of King's Landing. Robert Baratheon stood alone upon the eastern battlements, one meaty hand resting on the cold stone, the other clutching a wineskin he had not yet uncorked. Sleep had evaded him, chased off by the same memory that had stalked his dreams for nearly 2 decades. Lyanna's smile vanishing beneath a spray of blue winter roses. Time always softened the edges of grief, or so the singers claimed, yet Robert found the rawness of that wound undimmed. This morning, though, the ache carried a strange new weight, the weight of decision. He had dismissed the small council at Moonhup, sent them stumbling from the Tower of the Hand with his command echoing behind them. There would be no blades headed east for the silver-haired girl, no secret bag of gold for an assassin's purse. Not this time. Instead, Robert had chosen words and ravens over daggers. He would suit action to his long-mouthy boast, to end the war he had begun, a marriage he had proclaimed, to bind the blood of the storm with the blood of old Valyria, and in so doing, perhaps, to quiet the ghosts that whispered in the long hallways of his reign. The city stirred beneath him. Smoke rose from 1,000 hearths, ribbons of copper mist clinging to the thatch. Somewhere down in the maze of streets, a baker's boy cried the price of his loaves. A watchman beat the hour upon a blunted gong. All those small, homely sounds should have comforted a king. Proof of an order he had forged with hammer and battle cry. But Robert felt only the faint tremor of uncertainty. He flexed the fingers that once closed so easily around a warhammer. They felt stiff now, cursed with a dull ache where flesh met scar. The killing tools of his youth were rusting on hooks in the armory, and though he still wore the crown every day, it sometimes seemed heavier than any helm he had donned on campaign. The truth was too plain. Rebellion had ended nothing. Eris lay in the crypts of the city he had burned. Rhaegar's rubies still glimmered along the bed of the trident. Yet peace remained a brittle facade built atop lingering hatreds. This pact, Robert told himself, would be the last nail in the coffin of that old war. Let the wheel stop spinning. Let the dragon kneel to the stag and the stag extend an honest hand in return. He watched a pair of gulls swoop low over the water, and wondered what Eddard would say when he learned of the decision. Ned had always been the voice at Robert's shoulder, caution dressed in the gray of the north. The gods only knew what counsel stark honor would give on a union with the last Targaryen. Robert could almost hear him. Is peace won through the blood of children still peace, my king, or only an armistice? Ned's honor cut like ice, but the man himself remained as steady as granite. Robert would need that steadiness if the realm was to swallow such a gambit. He would need Renly's honeyed tongue in Highgarden's halls, Stannis' iron backbone in Dragonstone's shadowed courtyards, Littlefinger's devious smile in every counting house, from Gulltown to Lannisport. More than any of them, he would need the faith of one girl far away, a girl raised on bitter exile, fed tales of usurpers and stolen thrones. Would she accept his hand, or fold it into the iron fist of vengeance? Robert did not know, but he meant to find out. In the council chamber, 3 levels below, the air still smelled of candle smoke and anger. Grand Maester Pycelle had sputtered and harumphed until his jowls quivered like custard. Varys, perfumed and sphinx-smiling, had offered silken congratulations, though the eunuch's dark eyes revealed little of his true mind. Stannis had spoken only a single word, folly, then fallen to brooding silence, knuckles white against the table. Yet even Stannis did not protest when Robert invoked the memory of Steffon Baratheon, the father lost in the winds off Shipbreaker Bay. Father sought to bridge the gulf between houses, Robert had reminded his brothers, and honor demands we at least try what he could not. The logic of ancestry weighed heavy, and so at last even grim Stannis had bowed his head, if not in approval, then in obedience. Ravens would fly before midday, winging to every corner of Westeros and beyond, each scroll bearing the same stark proclamation, a royal betrothal to end the Targaryen question. The journey of those letters would take weeks across the wide seas, yet across the world, destiny had already begun to stir. Far to the east, Daenerys Targaryen rode at the rear of the Khalasar, her silver-blonde braid bouncing against the polished copper bells in her hair. Vaes Dothrak's distant mountain horns loomed in hazy silhouette. The morning promised heat. The plains smelled of horse sweat and sun-baked grass. She guided her small mare with practiced ease, shadowed by Sir Jorah Mormont, whose perpetual frown bent lower than usual. Daenerys had learned to read that craggy visage. Jorah's mind seldom strayed far from Westeros, from rumors gleaned in merchant tents and wine-sore taverns. Today, he seemed distracted by something more immediate. Twice he opened his mouth as if to speak. Twice he sealed it and fell back into silence. Finally, when the Khalasar paused to water their horses, Sir Jorah dismounted and knelt beside his queen. His voice was soft as a shy silk. "A rider has returned from the western fringes, Khaleesi. He carries word from the free cities." Daenerys felt her stomach tighten. News from the west could only mean more talk of her brother Viserys, or worse. Assassins, mercenaries, men sent by the usurper's goal. She braced herself as Jorah continued. "It seems King Robert has stayed his hand. The talk in Pentos is of ravens bearing an offer rather than knives." He hesitated, almost embarrassed. "They say he proposes marriage, my queen." The phrase was absurd on its face. What marriage could the man who stole her father's crown possibly offer? To whom? Yet as the words fell into the dry prairie air, they seemed to hang there, shimmering like a mirage, half promise, half threat. Daenerys closed her eyes and recalled the roars of the dragon banners her brothers swore to reclaim. A marriage pact? It was madness. Or perhaps, she wondered, the first sane thing she had heard of Robert Baratheon. She found Drogo that night beneath the starred sky, sitting upon a carven stool of polished bone. Shadows danced across the planes of his face. A faint smile curled his lips as she approached. Khal Drogo had never pretended interest in the politics of dead kings and distant thrones. He valued strength in the moment. What a blade could carve, what a horse could outrun. Yet he listened as she spoke, his dark eyes reflecting firelight. When she finished, he reached out, brushed her cheek, and uttered a single word in guttural Dothraki. Rarash. Realm. Possession. It could mean an empire crushed beneath hoof and arak, or a child carried in a womb. Daenerys did not know which vision crossed the Khal's mind, but she understood the promise behind it. From this marriage pact, or any other, power would sprout like wildflowers after rain, and the Khalasar would be there to harvest it, whether through peace or blood. The dragon and the horse lord would not move as separate sigils. They would rise together, if only she wished it. Days later, dawn spilled across the small port of Driftmark, as Lord Stannis Baratheon stepped from the prow of his galley. Dragon's kiss. He had not wanted this duty. He had objected in every way he knew. Yet Robert's command brooked no refusal, not even from his middle brother. Stannis' path was clear. He would sail to Braavos, where the Iron Bank held quiet audience with every claimant and monarch alike. There, he would lay the foundation for Robert's bargain: secured loans, trade concessions, safe conduct for emissaries. And perhaps, if fortune proved wroth, Stannis might even meet with a Targaryen envoy. The very thought scalded his pride. Still, the realm demanded sacrifice, and sacrifice was Stannis' meager comfort. As he strode down the dock, gulls screaming above him, he clenched a battered map in his hand. Across those drawn seas lay Braavos, Pentos, and beyond them, lands he had only glimpsed during the Greyjoy Rebellion's distant shadows. The world suddenly seemed impossibly vast. In King's Landing, Cersei Lannister sat before a polished oak mirror, her hair unbound and gleaming like molten gold. The letter from Robert lay open on the table beside her combs. She read it again, although the words had not changed. A union of our line to that of Daenerys Targaryen, in the interest of the realm's peace and prosperity. Cersei drew a slow breath, tasted iron on her tongue. Peace, her husband wrote, as though he understood the word. Prosperity, when the coffers dwindled faster than they filled, and whose hand would join with the dragon's. The letter did not say. Yet Cersei knew Robert's thinking. She had once known his heart too, before wine and nostalgia pickled it. He would barter their eldest, Joffrey, golden-haired, keen-eyed, cruel in the ways young lions learned from older ones, Robert would chain the boy's future to a silver-haired exile, all for some grand gesture of absolution. The notion filled her with a cold fury that burned deeper than any torch. Joff was hers, a lion of Lannister blood if not Baratheon, and she would not see him yoked like a dromedary to a dragon queen. She folded the letter, slid it into the sleeve of her pale green gown, and resolved to write to Lord Tywin at first light. War had its costs, but so did peace. Varys, meanwhile, glided through the Red Keep's passageways like a pink-robed ghost. His little birds whispered in his ear of docks busy with fresh sails, of coin changing hands in shadowed taverns, of a city holding its breath. The eunuch considered the balance of things, a knife stilled in mid-care, a match struck in the heart of tinder. Peace was notoriously fragile. One ill-chosen word from a sellsword in Pentos could topple the chessboard. Varys resolved to have 10 words prepared, sharp and precise, to nudge fate toward the outcome he favored. And what outcome was that? The realm's stability, of course. The realm always came first. Yet in the cool well of his thoughts, Varys enumerated the other benefits. A Targaryen queen joined to a Baratheon prince might placate the small folk, who still muttered legend of dragons in their cups. It might distract Robert from the whispers of rebellion in the Stormlands, from Renly's quiet rise among the Tyrells, from Stannis' unspoken claim on a kingship of law. One marriage to paper over many cracks. Varys smiled and vanished into the shadows. In the Reach, Mace Tyrell hosted a feast in the Hall of Highgarden, ostensibly to mark the harvest's promise, but truly to gauge the winds blowing down from King's Landing. Garlands of crimson roses hung from pillar to pillar, and sweet summer wine flowed like river water. Yet, amid the music and laughter, the whispers thrummed. Had the king truly offered his son to the dragon princess? Would Dorne bend the knee to such a match? Would the North? Margaery Tyrell, seated beside her father, listened as subtle as a sparrowhawk. She was 13, quick-minded and soft-spoken, and her eyes glittered with possibilities. A queen of Westeros she might yet become, but if Joffrey slipped beyond their grasp, new seeds must be planted. Margaery watched the flicker of torches reflect in golden goblets, and wondered which hearth might warm her ambitions next. Even beyond the Marband of Roses, beyond the pleasant air of Highgarden, she sensed the realm shifting. Roots uprooted, vines seeking purchase in fresh soil. On an unremarkable islet of the Stepstones, a sellsail captain named Miles Toyne unfolded a parchment bearing Robert's seal, read the bold proclamation, and laughed until wine shot from his nose. 5 minutes later, he ordered the Swift Serpent to sail north. Word of a peace such as this meant rich houses with soft shipping lanes, and where soft shipping lanes spread, fat purses followed. A king distracted by diplomacy paid less heed to the narrow sea's lawlessness. Raiders would feast on plunder. Peace, Miles thought, was the best wind a pirate could wish for. Even in the frost-stung air of Winterfell, Maester Luwin found himself startled awake by the clang of a bell used only to herald tidings from the crown. He trudged across the courtyard, lantern in hand, to receive the raven perched upon the rookery sill. The parchment it carried shook in the night breeze, and the black wax seal broke crisp beneath his fingernail. The letter's contents made him pause. He hurried to Lord Eddard Solar, heart thumping against his ribs. Inside, Catelyn Stark stood by the hearth, her robe drawn tight over nightclothes. Ned took the scroll with a grim frown, reading by the hearth's flickering light. When he finished, he passed it to his lady, then stared into the flames. Catelyn's face paled. "Can it be trusted?" she asked. Ned gave no answer. His thoughts lingered on the children, on loyalties sworn and betrayed, on cold bones beneath southern soil. Could Robert truly set aside such old anger? And if he could, what did that say of the realm? Ned looked down at his sword, ice, resting upon its dais. Some nights, honor was as heavy as Valyrian steel. In Braavos, the Titan's huge bronze eyes watched Stannis Baratheon's galley pass beneath. The Iron Bank's pale marble hall welcomed the Lord of Dragonstone with cool courtesy. Ink scratched parchment as contracts were drafted, though the ink smelled more like blood to Stannis. Each signature chained him tighter to a course he feared. He stood like a carved figurehead, jaw clenched, as the Braavosi seal was pressed into wax and the newly penned treaties filed away. Money opened doors, a Targaryen bride could open more. But doors opened 2 ways. Stannis found himself staring at a polished silver tray holding a half-poured cup of sweet red. He had no taste for sweet things. Yet he sipped, if only to keep the bitterness of this journey from souring every swallow of air. Back on the Dothraki Sea, 3 riders thundered across the dusty flats toward Daenerys' camp, dust pluming behind them like banners. As they dismounted, one produced a scroll bearing a broken red seal. The arms of Pentos Prince Illyrio. Ser Jorah's eyes widened at the sight. Within, Illyrio Mopatis addressed his dear friends in exile, advising caution. The usurper's court, he wrote, divided itself like pies at harvest feast, and within those slices serpents slept. Accept no agent without proof of his tether. Trust no parchment lacking 3 identical seals. Hostages were the coins of such high games. Without them, every vow rang hollow. Daenerys read the letter in the flicker of a campfire. The scroll smelled of foreign spices and wax. She thought of Viserys, of the thin line between begging hospitality and selling one's birthright for a sack of gold. She thought too of the child stirring within her belly. The stallion who mounts the world, the Dothraki called him. How would he ride through a Westeros united by such a marriage? Her hand drifted to the curve of her stomach. The babe did not stir, but she felt its presence like a sunrise beneath her skin. At the wall, the black-clad brothers murmured over the news that trickled north at Crow's pace. Samwell Tarly bent over the parchment, fat fingers trembling. Jon Snow stood beside him, wondering how peace in the far south might ripple even to this frozen end of the realm. He pictured a silver-haired queen crossing the shivering sea, dragons circling a red-keep sky, and a stag-bannered host lining the shores of Blackwater Bay. All those images seemed like tales told around a hearth. Yet the raven's words were ink, not smoke. Jon felt a restless pull in his heart, a longing to be part of the world of knights and kings he had left behind. Peace, they said. For the Wall, peace meant fewer recruits sentenced for crimes, less coin for supplies, and perhaps one day, forgetfulness. The realm forgot its sentinels when danger felt far away. Jon stared out into the night, where falling snowflakes caught the torchlight like floating embers, and wondered whether men would ever truly understand what peace costs. South and west again, at Casterly Rock, Lord Tywin Lannister examined his daughter's letter by the glow of a single golden candle. The old lion read every word twice, then folded the parchment with deliberate care. His face betrayed nothing, but his mind darted along familiar paths. A Baratheon Targaryen alliance threatened his hold on the Iron Throne's reins. Yes, his grandson sat upon Robert's knee for now, but rooks flew swift when kings changed counsel. A dragon princess might one day bear sons, and the realm loved dragonfire more than lions' roars. Tywin tapped a calloused finger against the letter, then summoned Sir Kevan with a bell. "Prepare a missive for Storm's End," he commanded. "Lord Renly will find our friendship worth the weight of gold." Tywin's smile was thin as parchment. Alliances shifted. Tywin intended to shape the ground beneath their feet. On Dragonstone, the sea crashed madly against black rock cliffs. Stannis' wife, Selyse Florent, paced the empty great hall, her lips moving in silent prayer to her stern hearth gods. She feared her husband's absence as one might fear a storm at sea. Intangible, yet ruinous. When the Red Woman entered, Melisandre of Asshai, her scarlet robes trailing like living flame, Selyse felt both dread and relief. The priestess spoke of fires seen in the night, of shadows cast by kings' hearts, of a stag bowing before a dragon only to rise anew in fiercer form. Selyse did not pretend to understand these prophecies, yet faith latched upon them all the same. Here, perhaps, was the assurance she sought, that the true king's path lay not in peace bargains, but in the burning light of a new god. The flicker of torches made the red gemstones at Melisandre's throat blaze. "The flames show many roads," the priestess whispered, "yet only one leads to dawn." Selyse knelt, trembling, and begged to learn which. Across the breadth of the narrow sea, The free city of Pentos prepared a quiet ballroom for guests who never came. Illyrio Mopatis paced among lacquered pillars and silk-draped divans, adjusting the fall of his velvet sleeves. He had hoped to host envoys from King Robert and the Mother of Dragons both, playing each against the other, while Pentos fattened on their gratitude. Instead, rumors sprang up like weeds. A Baratheon fleet sailing beneath Stannis' personal standard, a Dothraki horde creeping ever westward, the Iron Bank brokering loans so vast Illyrio could scarcely fathom their coin weight. Opportunity was ripening, and might rot just as swiftly. Illyrio called for his fastest sedan, intending a private meeting with the Sea Lord of Braavos. Better to ink one promise in secret than sign a dozen in daylight. In the Stormlands, Renly Baratheon hosted a hunting party through the rain-soaked woods of Tarth. His laughter echoed among oaks as he loosed an arrow, striking a stag calf clean behind the shoulder. A squire retrieved the carcass, and Renly's companions cheered. Yet when a courier arrived, soaked to the bone and breathless, Renly's smile froze. The message bore Lord Tywin's seal. As the others drank and roasted venison, Renly unfolded the letter by lantern glow. Tywin spoke of mutual benefit, of ambitions unfulfilled in the iron shadow of Robert's great will. Renly's mind whirled. He had long fancied himself the realm's favorite Baratheon. Charming, generous, golden-tongued. Tywin offered something more than compliments, something sharper than approval. Renly stared at the words until the lantern exhaust puffed black soot against the parchment. Ambition thrummed like a drawn bow inside his chest. In Valyria's smoking ruins, 3 dragon eggs warmed within their leather cradle. Tucked beneath a blanket of ski-blue silk, Doria, Denner's handmaid, stroked their star-speckled shells. The stones felt warm, as always. She could not say why the Khaleesi insisted the eggs accompany every journey, yet she found herself grateful. They were beautiful, heavy as dawn-polished marble, and they whispered of impossible futures. Dora pressed her ear to the black hundred egg and fancied she heard wind rushing over distant peaks. When she raised her head, she saw the Khaleesi across the tent, silhouette haloed by lamplight, her hand on her swelling belly, eyes fixed on some horizon no one else could see. Robert Baratheon sat alone at the end of the grand feast, prepared to celebrate his decision. The great hall rang with song. Harpists playing the Rains of Castamere, pipers weaving Storm of the Night. Courtiers drank and danced, toasting a peace not yet inked. Robert drank too, but every swallow burned more bitterly than the last. He gazed down the table at Cersei, brilliant in her emerald gown, laughing at some jest from Lancel. She had not spoken to Robert since that morning. Pride, he thought with a twist of scorn. Pride or something fiercer. His eyes drifted to Joffrey beside her, clad in black velvet chasing gold. The boy's chin jutted like a mailed fist. Robert wondered whether love could coax Joffrey into wedding the dragon girl. Was Joff even capable of love, or only of hunger? The king drained his cup, slammed it down, and called for another. Peace, he reminded himself. Peace. Peace, miles away, sounded like waves lapping against the pylons beneath the Erie's moon door. Lysa Arryn's face loomed over the yawning drop as she read the royal raven. Twice her lips moved without sound. Then she crumpled the parchment and threw it into the winds, where it fluttered like a dying moth before plummeting into fog. In that final tumble, she saw her sister's face, saw Jon Arryn whispering, "The seed is strong," saw a dagger of Valyrian steel. Lysa retreated into the Hall of Pillars, heart pounding. Let the Iron Throne play its games. The veil would remain closed, as high and cold as ice crystals. No stag nor dragon would pass these mountains while she drew breath. Back in V's Dothrak, beneath the Mother of Mountains, Daenerys paced the length of her silk-walled tent. 7 days had passed since Jorah brought word of Robert's offer. Each dawn since, riders thundered in and out, carrying scrolls, coin, rumors. The Khalasar buzzed with speculation. Would the Khaleesi bear Drogo west to claim the iron chair of her fathers, or summon the usurper east to kneel before the sacred herd gates? Daenerys sought Drogo's counsel nightly, found only his shrug. The world was theirs to ride, he seemed to say, Choose the direction. Yet the choice felt like iron cuffs tightening around her wrists. She could not forget the tale of her brother's death in the Dothraki Sea, crowned in molten gold. Viserys had believed crowns were rights, not responsibilities, and so his rights had blistered, melted, drowned him. Daenerys placed a cautious palm upon one dragon egg, feeling its subtle warmth, as though a heartbeat stirred beneath stone. She would not repeat her brother's mistake. She would listen to the world's beating pulse, choose the moment, and strike with open eyes. Across the narrow corridors of power, ravens emptied the last of their messages, and torchlight guttered in kindling puddles. The realm held its breath. Traders haggled shorter bargains, unsure how the wind might shift. Priests prayed longer, fearing whose gods would prosper under a stag-hand dragon banner. The old and young alike watched the skies, looking for wings, either feathered or scaled. And somewhere, unseen, men sharpened steel. For peace had its champions, true, but war had its lovers still. And theirs was a devotion that required no altar beyond the clang of blade on blade, the rush of blood over ground, too parched for treaties. The wheel had turned once under Robert's warhammer, crushing a dynasty in its spoke. Now, as dawn ripened into full day, and heralds rehearsed speeches of union, the wheel turned again, slower, but no less relentless. In the hush between each creaking motion lay 500 years of dragonfire and storm-racked fury, history forged anew with every heartbeat of the realm. Yet for this fleeting moment, between the high, soft hush of ravens' wings and the distant thunder of hooves, peace hovered. No heavier than a gull's feather, no stronger than a child's whispered wish, waiting to see upon which side of the scales fate would lay its inevitable weight. Ga. Ha. Moonlight rippled across the Dothraki Sea, silvering each blade of grass until the whole plain shimmered like water. Daenerys Targaryen slipped from her tent before dawn, leaving her handmaids tangled in sleep. The air tasted of dust and cool dew. Crickets sang a thin lament beneath the distant hiss of watchfires. She moved among the horses, palms brushing warm flanks, drawing strength from their steady heartbeats. In camp, men muttered of omens, ravens in the east, red stars hanging low, iron ships sailing west with black sails trimmed in gold. Some riders swore they had dreamt of dragons wheeling above the mother of mountains. Daenerys dreamt too, but hers were filled with voices, Viserys roaring, Rhaegar singing, an infant laughing in some memory she did not yet possess. And always, the echo of Robert Baratheon's offer, beating like a distant drum. Ser Jorah found her strafing the herd's edge at sunrise. He tethered his gelding beside hers and watched the first blush of color creep across the sky. Another raven came, he said after a time. From Qohor, they confirm Stannis met with Braavosi bankers. Gold is on the move, Khaleesi. He offered her the letter, but she waved it away. Gold flies swift, she murmured. But dragons fly swifter. Jorah's mouth quirked. We have no dragons. Yet. She laid a hand atop the egg tucked within her sash. Not yet. She echoed, and felt the warmth pulse through the stone. North of Vaes Dothrak, an unmarked cart jounced along a cracked roadway once laid by the Giscari Empire. Two men rode within, the Sellsword Dario Naharis, and an aging Pentoshi scribe named Belicho. Hidden beneath burlap satchels rested 3 ornate chests containing Myrish lenses, a moonstone necklace, and several sealed scrolls. One bore the Baratheon stag, another, the crowned skull of Tyrosh's Archon. Dario had been paid to deliver both to the queen across the grass. Yet gold from 2 directions weighed differently. While Belicho practiced speeches in High Valyrian, Dario calculated how much silver a single betrayal might purchase. The scent of smoke drifted on a rising wind. Somewhere ahead, campfires burned. He fingered his curved arak, admiring its edge. Opportunity, like steel, could be honed. Far away, in the rose gardens of Highgarden, Margaery Tyrell rehearsed courtesy with a trio of trembling courtiers, newly arrived from King's Landing. She poured them arbor gold, asked after their health, smiled with lips touched by dew-sweet gloss. Yet every question she spoke turned gently toward the crown prince. His mood, his habits, his rumored betrothal. The courtiers delivered scraps of rumor, supposition spread thin as honey on stale bread. Prince Joffrey had smashed a porcelain dragon in a fit of pique. The Queen Regent planned a progress through the Westerlands. The king himself remained closeted with Grand Maester Pycelle. Margaery weighed each scrap. Later, she found her grandmother Olenna, seated by an almond fountain, feeding crumbs to a nesting sparrow. Lady Olenna lifted one eyebrow. "Hens cluck louder than roosters these days," she said. "Best start collecting eggs before someone else does." Margaery knelt, smoothing her skirt. "The dragon girl may yet spurn the king," she ventured. "If she does, a stag stripped of dragon scales might find roses to his liking." Olenna's fingers paused above the sparrow's open beak. "Or thorns," she said, "if the roses are not careful." In King's Landing, Cersei Lannister summoned Qyburn to her private solar, a narrow chamber scented with myrrh and the faint metallic tang of steel. Qyburn arrived clad in dove-gray robes, his mild eyes glittering with hidden appetite. "Your Grace desired my counsel?" he asked. Cersei gestured toward a map of the narrow sea spread across a velvet-draped table. "I desire certainty," she said. "Tell me what poison cannot be smelled in sweet wine, what illness kills slowly enough to be mistaken for weakness of the womb, and what sum secures your silence." Qyburn inclined his head. "Knowledge, Your Grace, is its own price. Difficult to count, yet easy to spend." Cersei smiled thinly. "Name your coin. I shall mint it." Qyburn took up a quill. "In Braavos." Stannis Baratheon concluded his audience with the iron bank beneath a ceiling of painted constellations. The terms were brutal. Interest piled upon interest. Collateral stretching from Dragonstone's basalt spires to a dozen fishing hamlets along the narrow sea. But the loan was secured. Stannis felt as if his bones had been mortgaged. Outside, brine-tinged air slapped his face. Davos Seaworth awaited at the dock, fresh from reuniting with old smuggling friends who now kept warehouses of saltfish. "The Braavosi are eager to invest," Davos said. "They smell profit in peace." Stannis scowled. "They smell debt, sir, and chains for the debtor." He glanced at the blue-black water lapping against barnacle-scarred posts. "Yet debts are oaths. I will not sully Robert's peace by defaulting on mine." Davos studied him, noting the fine lines etched deeper than salt spray could carve. "Do you believe in this pact, my lord?" he asked softly. Stannis stared at the horizon where gulls wheeled like scraps of parchment. "I believe," he said at last, "that the realm will bleed if we fail. And I have bled enough for one lifetime." In Winterfell, Ned Stark knelt in the crypt beside Lyanna's tomb. A chill candle guttered at her feet, casting wavering shadows across the stone wolf's head that watched over her. Ned laid the scroll from Robert upon the bier. "You see?" he whispered to the quiet air. "He means to wed dragons and stags, set aside the ghosts." He fell silent, listening for some answer in the frozen stillness. None came. A soft footfall broke the hush. He turned to find Arya peering around the crypt door, cheeks smudged with candle soot. "Father," she said, "Maester Luwin sent me. He says there is fresh news from the south." Ned rose, brushing dust from his knees. "Tell him I'll come." As they walked the torchlit passage, Ned felt his daughter's keen eyes upon him. "Will the dragon lady be our queen?" she asked. Ned hesitated. "Perhaps," he said, "if peace holds." Arya's brow furrowed. "Mother says queens wear silks and smile at feasts. But dragons..." She trailed off. Ned placed a hand on her shoulder. "Dragons can be gentle, little wolf, if treated with respect." Arya glanced up, half doubtful, half dreaming. "I'd like to see one," she said, and hurried ahead. East of the Stepstones, the Swift Serpent intercepted a Lannisport cog laden with Dornish wine. Captain Miles Toyne hauled the merchant master onto deck, waving Robert's proclamation like a bloody flag. "The realm's at peace," he declared, laughing. "So every man's purse is mine." He demanded double levy for safe passage. The merchant balked. Miles had 3 men flogged before the cog surrendered its cargo. As the barrels rolled into his hold, Miles sipped the spiced vintage and spat it overboard. "Too sweet," he muttered. "But coin tastes better." Peace, he decided, was the sweetest wine, because fools drank it blind. In the Red Keep, Varys convened his quietest conclave in an abandoned scullery beneath the wine cellars, lit by a single lantern whose glow never reached the cobwebbed ceiling. 3 of his little birds, 1 mute stable boy, a washerwoman with broken teeth, and a sellsword disguised as a cook, reported in whispers. Stannis' ship due north within a fortnight. Renly hunting with Lord Mathis Rowan. Cersei's private audiences with a disgraced maester. Varys laced his fingers. "Whispers," he told them, "are arrows, best strung before the bowstring frays." He sent the boy to Dragonstone with a token of kindness, a pouch of candied almonds for Princess Shireen. He dispatched the washwoman to the Sept, to confess invented sins and overhear the High Septon's council, and the sellsword he tasked with shadowing the Queen's litter at dusk. When they had gone, Varys lifted the lantern, gazing at hundreds of dusty bottles lining the shelves, vintages from a dozen reigns. Some had spoiled, others improved. In the right season, the finest wine was poured at treaties and at funerals. Littlefinger, meanwhile, cultivated opportunity in the silk-scented courts of Lys. He dined with Magister Calhonero, gifted pearls to a courtesan famed for gathering secrets, and sold 3 ships' worth of Myrish carpets to a Braavosi factor at twice their worth. Each transaction yielded whispers. One whisper spoke of Illyria's secret letters to Riverrun, promising coin for ships ready to harbor dragons. Another named Yara Greyjoy as agent of a northern scheme to reclaim Pike's lost glory. Littlefinger tallied each rumor. By the time his galley sailed for Sunspear, he held promises from 7 city-states, none aware of the others. He smiled at the night sea, imagining coins piling higher than the Hightower. If stags and dragons wed, petals of plucked roses and golden lion manes would drift across the floor, and Petyr Baelish would sweep them into his coffers. As the moon waxed, Cersei's resolve hardened. Under Qyburn's tutelage, she began concocting tonics. Mandrake steeped in sweet leaf, basilisk blood dried and powdered, disguised within jars of rosehip oil and lavender. Each vial she labeled as a gift for the Dragon Princess. Perfumes, elixirs to ease seasickness, rare ointments for smooth skin. A queen, Cersei reasoned, would welcome luxury. And poison, she assured herself, was mercy compared to the claws of dragons unborn. She penned a separate letter to Lord Tywin, imploring a swift hand against any match that threatened Joffrey's claim. "Send steel," she wrote, "if letters will not suffice." Tywin's reply would come in due course, but Cersei was tired of waiting. In the Wales Road Tavern of Braavos, Melisandre found Stannis brooding over a cup of flame-washed brandy. Sailors eyed her as she passed. Silk the color of blood, ruby at her throat blazing with its own inner furnace. She stood before Stannis and spoke softly. "The fires have given me a vision." He stared, wary. "Another? A stag crowned in shadow," she said, bowing its head to a dragon with wings of ash. Beneath their feet, a sword of light blazed, yet its hilt was broken. She laid a hand over his. "A pact will shatter if forged in fear. Only truth may temper steel." Stannis closed his fingers around the cup until his knuckles whitened. "Truth," he echoed. "Does truth serve kings?" Melisandre lowered her voice. "Serve the Lord of Light, and truth shall serve you." Stannis drained the brandy in one harsh swallow. Days passed. Ravens flitted across skies grown restless with rumor. Farmers in the Riverlands complained their mares birthed stillborn foals with twisted legs. Septons prayed louder, maesters wrote longer. Peace, so newly spoken, bred unease faster than war's certainty. At last, a black-hulled galley flying the crowned stag anchored off Pentos. Stannis disembarked, flanked by Davos and 4 Stormlander guards. Prince Illyrio awaited on a marble quay, glistening in orange brocade, rings sparkling like droplets on sausage-thick fingers. "Lord Stannis," he boomed, arms wide. "Welcome, welcome. Pentos rejoices to host a king's brother." Stannis acknowledged the greeting with a curt nod. They entered Illyrio's manse, through perfumed gardens, where lemon trees bowed beneath waxy fruit. Over plates of duck glazed in honeyed raisins, Illyrio unveiled his pièce de résistance, an ebony box containing a single lock of silver-gold hair tied with blue silk. A token, he said, from her grace, Daenerys Stormborn, to show goodwill. Stannis eyed the hair, suspicious. Illyrio's smile widened. A child's first offering, perhaps. Dragon's gift, molted scales, men, strands of hair. Stannis touched the silk. It felt impossibly soft, like regret. "Tell the princess," he said, "that Robert's table is set. Will she break bread or swords?" Illyrio's eyes twinkled. "She will dine," he promised. "But taste comes after scent, and scent after sight. Let her see the dish, sir, before you demand she eat." Word of the exchange raced across the free cities. In Volantis, the Triarchs debated dispatching their own envoy, fearful of being cut from the dance. In Tyrosh, the Archon offered the second son's double pay to escort his niece to King's Landing, hoping to place her among the Queen's new ladies-in-waiting. Even in Qarth, the Pureborn convened at the Hall of 1,000 Thrones, anxious that red-skinned warlocks might lose further influence should dragons settle comfortably among Western courts. In Vaes Dothrak, Khal Drogo hosted a night of bloodwine and fire juggling in honor of the approaching marriage envoy. Daenerys sat beside him on a high bench of carved horn, watching flames spin like golden wheels above dancers' heads. Her thoughts wandered to the lock of hair she had sent with Illyrio, a symbol she hoped would speak louder than emissaries' tongues. A small gift, yet personal, proof she recognized the overture. Soon, she would ride east to greet Stannis herself. Leaving the Khalasar encamped beneath the Mother of Mountains, she had persuaded Drogo. The Horse Lord would accompany her as far as Norvos, but no farther. "Westeros reeks of stone," he said. "My stallion sickens on stone." Daenerys conceded. A fraction of her was relieved. Negotiations are easier without warriors who measure diplomacy by the width of a sword cut. Yet alone, she would stand before the brother of the man who usurped her birthright. Alone, she would weigh vengeance against hope. The next morning, Daario Naharis arrived bearing the chests and scrolls. He dismounted with a flourish, gold tooth flashing. When the guards blocked his path, he laughed. "I bring riches for the blood of the dragon," he proclaimed. "Let me pass, or spill silver across the sand with your blade." Daenerys emerged, flanked by Jorah. Daario knelt extravagantly, presenting a bouquet of blue winter roses carved from lapis lazuli, each petal vined with silver. "A gift," he said, "from a forgotten knight who once loved a lady crowned in blue." Daenerys accepted, startled by the homage to Lyanna Stark, though Daario could not know the name. The Sellsword's smile widened as her gaze lingered. Jorah stiffened. That night, Daenerys opened the first chest. Inside lay a gown of midnight silk shot through with threads of gold, the black and gold of Baratheon heraldry worked into a pattern of leaping stags and unfurling dragons. She traced the embroidery, feeling every stitch tug at memory and possibility alike. In the second chest lay rubies, Rhaegar's favored gemstone, set into a necklace shaped like a three-headed dragon breathing flame. She held it aloft, watching lamplight flicker off the facets. In the third chest, beneath a false bottom, she discovered a slim dagger with a hilt of pale weirwood, its blade Valyrian steel chased with lightning-inlaid silver. A note curled around the hilt read, "For protection, milady, should words fail." No signature. She showed Jorah, whose frown deepened. "Gifts with twin edges, Khaleesi," he warned. "Beauty before danger, always." In King's Landing, Cersei dispatched Ser Yaimi to River Run as envoy of goodwill. Though his true purpose was to measure the Tully's appetite for rebellion, should dragons nest in their daughters' futures. Jaime rode at the head of a column of Lannister knights, red cloaks snapping. As he passed beneath the mudgate, small folk tossed rotten fruit, some out of hatred, some because bread cost more than anger. Jaime ignored them. "People love crowns," he muttered to Ser Boros, "until crowns tax their purses." The Kingslayer had never believed in Robert's peace. Men loved war too well. Yet he wondered how it might feel if the shouting never stopped. 2 nights later, Tyrion Lannister arrived at Winterfell, saddle sore and half frozen. At supper, he and Ned spoke over trencher breads. A Targaryen bride, Tyrion mused, chewing thoughtfully. A bold play. My sister chews crowns like marrow bones, you know. I expect she'll choke if forced to swallow this one. Ned regarded him. Does Lord Tywin share her view? My father, Tyrion said, shares no one's view but his own. He sipped wine. Still, even lions blink when dragons breathe fire. Ned's gaze fell to the hearth, to orange embers pulsing in silence. And stags? He asked. Do they bow? Tyrion shrugged. Only to drink, he said. Ned had allowed himself a thin smile. In Old Town, Archmaester Marwyn cracked open a dusty tome titled Blood and Bondage, Marriage Alliances of the Ancient Kiscari, and found a passage describing rituals binding dragonlords to lesser tribes. Each spouse drank the other's blood from a golden cup. Marwyn copied the page, sealed it, and sent it by raven to Maester Pycelle, marking it urgent. Knowledge, he knew, was seldom welcomed at court, but ignorance could topple towers. He returned the tome to its shelf, where a faint smell of brimstone lingered. Dragons had little patience for parchment. Across the narrow sea, Daenerys set forth toward Pentos, accompanied by Ser Jorah, Daario, Bellico, and 30 Dothraki blood riders Doardoi. The Khalasar cloaked her departure in thunder. Hoofbeats, shouted songs, the crack of whips. But once beyond earshot, the entourage dwindled to a quiet caravan. They rode beneath skies so wide it seemed to swallow thought. Nights, they camped beside trickling streams, roasting goat and swapping tales of kingdoms none had seen. Daario sang bawdy Pentoshi ballads. Jorah recited lines of ancient poetry in guttural Northman cadence. Bellico scribbled diplomatic drafts by firelight. Daenerys listened, her fingers brushing the dragon eggs nestled in furs beside her bedroll. Sometimes she pressed the Valyrian dagger against her palm, testing the weight. Words, she reminded herself, could cut deeper than steel, but steel could finish what words began. In Pentos, Stannis paced Illyrio's manse like a caged tiger. Daily, he sent ravens to King's Landing detailing progress. None returned. Doubt gnawed. One evening, Davos fetched herbs to soothe his lord's stomach, only to find Melisandre waiting at the chamber door. The night is long, she told Davos, and kings grow weary. Davos blocked her path. My lord rests, he said. She smiled gently. I bring dreams of fire, not nightmares. Davos did not move. The ruby at her throat glowed brighter. Tell him, she said, that shadows quicken in the womb of dusk. She turned, robes whispering like flames. Davos watched until she vanished, then wondered if she had ever truly stood there at all. On the 20th day of Daenerys' journey, the walls of Pentos rose before her. Ivory towers crowned with green-tiled roofs. Prince Illyrio greeted her in the Plaza of the Fountains, bowing so low his beard swept white marble. Behind him stood Stannis Baratheon, stern as a cliff face. For a heartbeat, the plaza fell silent. Then Daenerys advanced, shoulders squared, silver braid gleaming. My lord, she said to Stannis, high Valyrian lilt shading her common tongue. I bring greetings from the mother of mountains, to the brother of a king. Stannis' jaw flexed. I come in my brother's name, he replied, voice roughened by sea salt and strain. He offers alliance, sealed by marriage. Daenerys dipped her head. Alliance requires trust. She drew the Valyrian dagger, held it between them. Gasps rippled through the assembled courtiers. A gift returned, she said. Blade for blade. Stannis' eyes flicked to Illyrio, who blanched. Stannis accepted the dagger carefully, weighing it. Trust, he said, begins with truth. He sheathed the knife. They dined that night beneath a vaulted ceiling painted with galaxies. Dothraki guards ringed the hall. Baratheon men stood opposite, their mailed fists clenched on spear hafts. At the table's center blazed a sunburst of candles. Illyrio presided, dripping welcome like treacle. Stannis presented a parchment bearing Robert's seal. The proposed terms, meticulously inked. Daenerys read in silence. She noted the clause granting her free passage, another promising to recognize her unborn child as heir to distant lands east of the Narrow Sea. Should she renounce all claims to the Iron Throne? She laid the parchment aside. "I was born in Dragonstone," she said. "You asked me to abandon my birthright." Stannis' brows knit. "My brother would make you queen beside his son. Land, safety, honor, these he offers. Peace for Westeros." Daenerys tasted the words like unripe fruit. "Whose peace?" she asked. "The small folk who burn beneath dragonfire? Or the lords whose purses fatten in its shadow?" Stannis looked tired. "Peace for those still living," he said. "The dead need none." Daenerys' hand strayed to her belly. The child kicked, once, firm and insistent. She lifted her gaze. "And dragons?" she asked. Stannis hesitated. "Robert fears dragons," he admitted. He would see none hatched. Silence rippled outward. At the hall's edge, Jorah stiffened. Daario cracked his knuckles. Daenerys folded her hands in her lap. "Then Robert offers not alliance but surrender," she said softly. "He would bind my womb as he bound his hammers." Stannis opened his mouth, yet no words came. The feast ended in uneasy courtesy. Illyrio escorted Stannis to chambers near the Sky Bridge. Daenerys retired to a pavilion in the orange grove. Beneath citron-scented boughs, she found Jorah sharpening his sword. "The offer insults you," he said. She sighed. "Perhaps. Yet better an insult spoken than an arrow loosed." She paced among lanterns swaying in warm breeze. "My brother died chasing a crown of molten gold. I will not repeat his folly. Still, I will not crawl." Jorah slid the whetstone down the blade. "What then?" She turned to him, eyes bright as comet trails. "We write new terms." She lifted the ruby necklace from her throat, held it aloft. "Tomorrow we test the mettle of Robert's resolve." At dawn, thunder echoed over Pentos, though skies remained clear. Daenerys entered the negotiation chamber clad in the midnight gown of stag and dragon. Stannis sat across a low table strewn with vellum and quills. Daenerys unrolled a fresh parchment. "My counter-offer," she announced. She proposed a double marriage. Herself to Joffrey Baratheon, her yet unborn son or daughter betrothed to Myrcella or Tommen. In exchange, she would return to Dragonstone with dragons unhatched but unbound, swearing never to fly them in war without crown approval. She would renounce claim to the Iron Throne until Robert's death. Thereafter, succession would pass jointly through both bloodlines, their firstborn ruling in name Baratheon Targaryen. She demanded seats on the small council for representatives of Meereen, Pentos, and Braavos, naming Illyrio to Stannis' disgust. She requested restoration of Dragonstone to the Targaryen cadet branch in perpetuity. Last, she insisted on the exile of any who plotted against the Union, naming Cersei Lannister's associations with Qyburn. Stannis listened, expression granite. When she finished, he stared at his calloused hands. "My brother will balk," he said. "He will choke on half these terms." Daenerys met his gaze. "Then we shall see if Robert values peace more than pride." She slid the parchment forward. Stannis took it as though it were a live viper. "I will deliver this," he said. "But if he refuses, then dragons will answer," she said, voice low. "And kings will burn." That night, Stannis wrote a letter to Robert, ink spattered where his quill pressed too hard. Davos sealed it with Stannis' signet. As the wax cooled, the Onion Knight voiced a single worry. "Will the king heed any counsel but his own?" Stannis massaged his temples. "If Robert spurns this," he said, "few paths remain. Steel or fire." He handed the scroll to a Braavosi Ravener. In King's Landing, Robert received the missive during a meeting with Pycelle and Lord Commander Barristan Selmy. He read slowly, scarred thumb dragging across each line. Veins bulged purple at his temples. "She dares," he muttered. "She dares." Yet as he read on, his scowl softened. Barristan watched, puzzled, as the king's shoulders sagged. Robert looked up, eyes bloodshot. "She offers peace, Selmy. At a price," Barristan observed. A steep price. Robert exhaled, nostrils flaring. A price less than war. He handed the scroll to Pycelle, who donned spectacles, mumbling, "Outrageous, my liege." "Utterly." Robert slammed a fist on the table. "Enough. Summon the small council, we decide before moonset." When the council assembled, tension crackled like dry flax set to flame. Renly arrived sun-flushed from the hunt. Cersei cool as marble, Littlefinger bright-eyed, Varys serene. Robert read Daenerys' terms aloud. Outcry erupted. Cersei declared treason. Renly called it cunning. Stannis absent, his seat empty, chilled the room. Pycelle warned of bastardizing royal blood. Littlefinger spoke of trade boons. Varys murmured of stability. Robert listened, refilling his goblet, draining it, refilling again. At last he rose. "If peace is bought with words," he said, "let us pay. I tire of paying with flesh." He looked directly at Cersei. "The dragon girl seeks security, not dominion. Joffrey will wed her, or I will break his pretty crown across his skull." The queen's face blanched. Renly's mouth fell open. Littlefinger smiled faintly. Varys lowered his eyes. Later, in her chambers, Cersei smashed a mirror and slashed her palm on the shards. Blood dripped onto marble. She pressed her wounded hand to her lips, tasting iron. "So be it," she whispered. "If dragons come to King's Landing, they will choke on lion hearts." She wrapped her hand in silk and summoned Qyburn. Meanwhile, Tywin Lannister's reply reached her the same hour. A terse line of Valyrian steel inked upon parchment. "The lion does not kneel." Cersei read it by candlelight, then dropped the parchment into the flame. The corners curled, blackened. She watched until no trace remained. In Pentos, Daenerys awaited the raven's return within a garden of night-blooming jasmine. The petals unfurled under moonlight, releasing perfume so thick it felt drinkable. Jorah stood vigil at the gate, eyes fixed on the sky. Dario idled nearby, twirling a dagger through his fingers. Bellicho scribbled addenda to treaties none had signed. When a raven finally swooped onto the ivory perch, Daenerys approached with racing pulse. The letter bore Robert's hand. She broke the seal. "My lady," it began, "your words slice deeper than steel, yet bleed truer than blood. I'm weary of bleeding. Come to King's Landing beneath truce flag. Bring your blood riders or none, as you wish. Joffrey shall kneel before the ashes of war, and rise betrothed to peace. Dragons may rest in Dragonstone. The wheel must halt. Robert of House Baratheon, first of his name." Daenerys read it thrice. She lowered the parchment, eyes shimmering. Jorah whispered. "He accepts." She breathed. "He accepts." A hush fell over the garden. Wind stirred the jasmine. Somewhere beyond the walls, bells began to ring. Pentos harbor bells, calling ships to sail on dawn tide. Daenerys felt the child kick once more, firm and fearless. She smiled. "We sail," she said. "To Westeros." Across the city, Illyrio counted coins into a chest. Each clink echoed his thoughts. A dragon queen in Westeros meant spice routes ripe for the taking. Ports rebuilding, taxes to be collected. In the flicker of lamplight, his smile glinted like tempered gold. At sea, the galley dragon's kiss raised anchor alongside 3 Pentoshi carracks. Stannis stood at the prow as lines were cast off. Melisandre glided onto deck unbidden. "The night ahead is treacherous," she murmured. Stannis eyed her. "I know, trust in the light," she said. She opened her palm. Within lay a curl of silver gold hair. She cast it into the wind, where it scattered like starlight. "A strand," she said, "can bind fates tighter than chains." Stannis watched the fragments drift. Somewhere in the dark, thunder grumbled. In the Red Keep, Robert paced the throne room at dawn. Shafts of sunlight pierced stained glass windows, painting dragons across his armor. He halted before the Iron Throne, twisted swords glimmering, and laid his calloused hand upon one jagged blade. "I will not kill children," he murmured. "Not this time." On a balcony above, Varys observed, silent. He released the breath he had held for years. Perhaps, he thought, The realm might yet survive the game it played with destiny. Yet as he turned away, a flutter of wings caught his ear. A crow perched on an open sill, black feathers ruffled by breeze. It croaked once, harsh and raw, then launched into the sky. Varys watched it vanish. Shadows stretched long across the marble floor. Beyond the sea, dawn broke over Dragonstone. Maester Cresson woke to a cracked bell tolling. He shuffled onto the parapet, squinting into pale light. A red dawn, he noted. A sailor's warning. He hunched deeper into his robe, clutching the scroll Stannis had left. A marriage, he whispered to gulls wheeling overhead. Or a war wrapped in satin. The gulls screamed, unimpressed. On the deck of her Pentoshi flagship, Daenerys stood beneath sails painted with three-headed dragons. The wind filled them, tugging the vessel west. She breathed salt and promise. Jorah approached. "Your Grace," he said, "what of the eggs?" She turned to the oak chest at her feet. She opened it. Sunlight spilled across three ovals of rippled stone. Green and bronze, cream and gold, black and red. She touched each in turn. "They travel with me," she said. "Their fate is mine." She closed the lid. Jorah nodded. "And the Dothraki?" "Drogo waits." She gazed at the horizon. "When dragons fly, the world will change. Until then, we offer peace." She watched gulls circle, white against blue. "But should peace break," she whispered, "fire will answer." Renly Baratheon knelt within the sept, at storm's end, prayer drifting from his lips. He prayed for Robert's wisdom, for Cersei's restraint, for dragons to remain legend. Yet in his heart, ambition pulsed. He imagined a crown of antlers fused with dragon wings, forged for a younger, more beloved king than Joffrey. The prayer faltered. Renly rose, cloak swirling. Outside, Rainbow Guard knights awaited. The wind carried a distant scent of smoke. Cersei Lannister stood upon a tower balcony, hair whipping in fierce gusts. Below, Blackwater Bay glinted. A black ship approached, Stannis' sigil fluttering aft. She clenched the parapet until knuckles cracked. "Let dragons come," she hissed. "I have lions." Behind her, Qyburn emerged from shadow, holding a vial of clear fluid. "A single drop," he said, "will still a dragon's heart." Cersei accepted the vial, tucking it into her sleeve. "And if the dragon lives?" she asked. Qyburn smiled thinly. "We carve its wings." In some nameless alley, a rag-clothed child counted copper coins left by a pale man in pink silk. She would carry a message across city rooftops at dusk. "The queen seeks venom, the master has it." Payment agreed. The child tucked the coins into her ragged shift, eyes shining. Copper today might become silver tomorrow. The wheel turned. Stannis' fleet sighted Dragonstone's volcanic peaks under storm-bruised skies. Lightning forked above the painted table tower. Melisandre raised both arms, hair whipping like red flame. "Fire cleanses," she called. Voice lifted to the roaring wind. Thunder answered. Stannis stared, thinking of the silver-gold hair, of a dagger returned, of shadows unborn. He grasped the dagger's hilt at his belt. Its Valyrian steel felt cold as truth. Days later, Daenerys' convoy glimpsed the coast of Dorne, parched hills, red cliffs, lonely watchtowers. On deck, Bellatrix rehearsed the ceremony to take place in King's Landing. Arrival at the Mudgate, escort to Maegor's Holdfast, audience in the throne room amid banners of black and gold. "The Queen Regent insists on propriety," he said. "The realm is watching." Daenerys nodded absently. She pictured Joffrey's face, pride incarnate, and wondered whether humility could bloom in blood such as his. She slipped a hand into a hidden pouch, fingertips brushing small glass vials filled with vibrant powders. One white as milk, the other red as rust. Daario had provided them, promising they were only dyes for silks. She was not so certain. But she kept them, because power often came in unmarked bottles too. In King's Landing, tents blossomed along the King's Road like fever flowers, heraldic standards cracking in the breeze. Martell sun spears, Tyrell golden roses, Arryn winged moons. Lords and ladies flooded the capital, vying to witness history. Inns overflowed. Brothels tripled their prices. Pickpockets danced among crowded squares. Septons preached peace. Beggars hissed that dragons would roast lords fat as hogs. On the hill of Rhaenys dragon pit, broken stones baked under sun, silent witness to beasts long dead. Robert Baratheon donned ceremonial armor the night before Daenerys' arrival. The breastplate no longer fit. He cursed the smiths, ordered straps loosened. Grand Maester Pycelle applied poultices to sores on the king's shoulders, mumbling of humors. Robert brushed him off and sent for more wine. Alone, he lifted his warhammer from its mount. Old friend, old burden. He traced the dented head where Rhaegar's rubies once scattered. Tomorrow, he told the hammer, we bury the past. He set it down, turned toward the balcony, and gazed over a city flickering with torchlight. Lyanna, he whispered to the night, forgive me. Dawn painted the sky with streaks of rose and gold as Daenerys' ship glided into Blackwater Bay. Trumpets cried from the ramparts. The dragon gate opened. Robert waited upon the quay, flanked by Barristan Selmy and a dozen guards in cerulean cloaks. Seagulls wheeled above. Daenerys appeared at the gangplank's crest, cloak snapping, silver gold braid gleaming. Behind her came Jorah, Daario, Bellatrix, and her blood raiders in leather and bronze. Robert's breath caught. Not with lust, he realized, but with awe and dread entwined. He stepped forward as she descended. She halted before him, head high. Robert bowed, awkward yet sincere. Princess, he rasped. Welcome. She inclined her head fractionally. Your Grace. Silence trembled between them. Then Robert turned, extending his arm. She accepted. Together they walked toward the Red Keep, stags and dragons side by side. High above, in a darkened tower, Cersei watched through a spyglass. The vial of poison warmed in her sleeve like a heartbeat. Next to her, Qyburn whispered, a single drop. Cersei lowered the glass. Not yet, she murmured. The game begins with smiles. Below, the procession wound through cheering crowds. Bells tolled. Somewhere behind the king and dragon princess marched Joffrey, lips pressed tight, jaw set like chiseled stone. Cersei watched her son, and her fury cooled to diamond clarity. Soon, she said. Soon. At the city's edge, Varys stood among common folk, disguised in roughspun. He watched Daenerys pass, noting the grace in her stride, the steel in her eyes. He turned to a ragged news singer beside him. A new dawn, he remarked. The singer shrugged. Dawn's end, he said, spitting. Varys sighed. Only until the next, he replied, and melted into the crowd. In the Red Keep's courtyard, Ned Stark greeted Daenerys with solemn courtesy. Their eyes met. Her lilac storm, his gray calm. Something unspoken moved between them. Regret, perhaps, for blood spilled before either had a choice. She thanked him for his welcome. He bowed. Above them, banners snapped. The crowned stag quartered with the three-headed dragon. The fabric billowed, tangled briefly, parted, then unfurled whole. As the sun reached its zenith, Maester Pycelle proclaimed the betrothal of Joffrey Baratheon and Daenerys Targaryen. Cheers erupted, doves burst skyward. Joffrey knelt, offering a ring wrought of black iron and red gold. Daenerys accepted, slipping it onto her finger. Trumpets blared. Wine spilled. Peace seemed in that moment, solid as stone. Yet in the shadow of the throne, Cersei's hand closed around Qyburn's vial. And in a distant pavilion beyond the mud gate, a trio of cloaked men uncrated a wooden box. Within, straw shifted around a small iron sphere inscribed with Valyrian runes. Windfire, whispered one, voice trembling. A dragon's egg dies, a city burns. They lifted the sphere gently, cradling doom. Under the vault of the Red Keep, dragons remained mere painted tiles. Yet above, unseen gears groaned. The wheel turning still, its spokes stained by promise and fear alike. Peace had come, clad in silk and seal wax. But bonds forged in parchment could snap beneath the weight of crowns, and beneath the beating of wings that had yet to hatch. Oh, cow. Ye nay. Wind drifted through the long arched windows of Maker's Holdfast, troubling the velvet draperies and scattering petals from the garlands strung overhead. The welcome feast had ended hours earlier, its revelers dispersed to couches and alcoves, yet the air still carried faint aromas of roast boar and spiced Dornish wine. Daenerys found herself awake despite the lateness, seated alone upon a cushioned divan in the Queen's solar lent to her for the night. Moonlight bled in silver columns across the polished floor, pooling around a lacquered casket that stood open at her feet. Within, nestled in folds of soft cloth, lay the 3 dragon eggs, green bronze, green gold, and black red, each shimmering like captured embers. She traced the scales of the closest, feeling warmth pulse up through her fingertips, and let her thoughts wander. The feast's pageantry replayed in fragments. Joffrey's stiff bow as he slipped the iron gold ring onto her hand. Robert's booming toast, half pride, half penitence. The roar of applause from lords who had once sworn death to her line. Yet behind every smile, Daenerys glimpsed calculation. Lords Arryn and Royce weighing oaths against opportunities. Mace Tyrell crowing of harvests, while his mother's eyes darted like sparrowhawks. Pettier Baelish lingering near the dais murmuring of coin flows. Varys gliding through the shadows with silken compliments. Peace, they proclaimed, yet each word felt strung on threads. A tap sounded at the door. Jorah Mormont entered, helm tucked beneath one arm. He looked travel-worn and wary. "I posted 2 blood riders outside," he said quietly. "Yet this castle has as many passages as a termite hill. If you wish, I'll stand the night inside." She shook her head. "Rest, Jorah. The walls are thick." Still he lingered, gaze drifting to the eggs. "This city whispers. Some call you mother already." She allowed herself a small smile. "Words hatch no dragons. Nor do flames without kindling," he returned. "I remember tales. The bells will ring again tomorrow, louder. Caution sits poorly on those who hunger for spectacle." He placed a hand briefly over his heart, bowed, and withdrew. Alone once more, Daenerys crossed to the balcony. King's Landing stretched below, black roofs gleaming where torches cast saffron halos. The great Sept's dome glowed pale. Distant bells told midnight's 3rd note. Somewhere beyond, the narrow sea lapped unseen. Her skin prickled. In the hush, she fancied she heard wings, distant, vast, whispering of sky unbound. She clasped the ring Joffrey had given her. Its metal felt cold despite the room's warmth. Footsteps tapped in the corridor beyond. A lighter tread now, quick and careful. She turned as the door creaked. A girl of perhaps 9 slipped inside. Hair paler than winter wheat, eyes wide. The child wore servant browns, a tray balanced in her small hands. "Hot milk and honey, princess," the girl whispered. Daenerys crossed the chamber, accepting the cup. Steam spiraled. Something in the child's gaze unsettled her, a focus too keen for such youth. "What is your name?" Daenerys asked gently. "Lana," the girl replied. "A common name in these parts, and too common," Daenerys thought fleetingly, for coincidence. She sipped once. Sweetness mingled with faint bitterness. The girl watched. Daenerys set the cup aside. "Tell me who sent you." The little servant blinked. "The queen, milady." "Which queen?" Silence. The girl lowered her head. Daenerys stepped forward, laying 2 fingers beneath her chin. "Speak truth and you'll leave unharmed." The child's lashes fluttered. "Gold woman," she murmured. "Smells of roses." "Cersei, then. Perhaps a kindness, or not." Daenerys released her. "Go." The girl bobbed a curtsy, hurried out. Daenerys crossed back to the hearth, poured the remaining milk into a jasper bowl, revolved it beneath the light. Tiny motes shimmered at the surface, too fine for nutmeg, too dull for cinnamon. Her pulse quickened. She seized a silver pin and dipped its point, then brushed it against a caged sparrow that twittered on the balcony rail. Seconds passed. The bird fluffed its feathers, then stilled, swayed, toppled. Daenerys closed her eyes. Poison.call. So soon. She strode to her writing desk, shattered the wax on a blank scroll, and penned 4 sharp lines in Dothraki script. Folding the parchment, she reached for the honey jar, scooped a single drop onto the seal, pressed. Outside, the two blood riders stood sentinel. She handed the message to Ko Jogo. Ride. Khal Drogo waits beyond the God's Eye by now. Tell him the wedding feast begins with daggers. Jogo thumped his chest, sprinted off into shadow. Back inside, Daenerys considered the eggs. They pulsed, or perhaps her heartbeat did. She stoked the hearth higher, flames leaping. Carefully she lifted the green bronze egg, held it to the light. The scales glowed faintly. An impulse seized her. Madness, Viserys would have said. But she obeyed. Into the fire she set the egg. Sparks erupted. Heat licked her arms, though she felt no pain. The egg sat amid coals, shimmering. She waited, breath held. A crack, hairline, then branching, skittered across its surface. She sucked in breath, but no further break appeared. The fissure dimmed, sealed, as though scales knit anew. The egg's warmth subsided. She drew it out barehanded, unburned. Hope flickered, fierce and dangerous. Not yet, she murmured. Far across the castle, Cersei Lannister moved through torchlit halls, Qyburn trailing like a pale shadow. They entered a narrow chamber hung with crimson drapes. A single brazier glowed low. Upon a stone table rested a silver flagon and 2 cups. The queen's bandaged hand throbbed beneath silken wraps, but her voice stayed level. You placed the powder? Qyburn inclined his head. In the honey, enough to still a dragon. Good. Cersei poured arbor red, swirling it, watching lamplight fracture in the wine. Tomorrow, she joins us for council. We will toast to new beginnings. Qyburn's smile flickered. Should the first draft fail, then we press harder. Lions feast on carrion, but only after the kill is sure. She drank, lips staining darker. I want her ashes scattered before the babe quickens. In a window seat across the hall, Tyrion Lannister puffed his pipe, having noted every word through a cracked door. Smoke rings drifted overhead. Ashes, he mused softly. Hard to scatter what flies. He slipped away, mind already setting pieces upon unseen boards. Down the hillside in Flea Bottom, 3 cloaked strangers met beside a tanner's vat. One produced the iron sphere etched in Valyrian runes. Another revealed a folded parchment bearing the mark of the Golden Company. The Titan's daughter docks by dawn, he said. Lysine powder primed within the device. Once the Queen Regent signals, we position beneath the Dragon Pit foundations. One spark, collapse the hill, bury the capital's dragons unborn. The third man, voice hoarse as gravel, asked, and if the Targaryen survives? Fire breeds fire, the first replied. We'll stoke rebellion from the ashes. They parted, footsteps lost in mire. At the Tower of the Hand, Ned Stark paced the gallery lined with suits of armor. Littlefinger lounged nearby, idly stroking the mane of a marble lion. You look troubled, my lord, Petyr observed. The celebration weighed heavy. Ned halted. I'm no jester, Baelish. Something stinks behind these smiles. Littlefinger's eyes danced. Power often smells of rot, yet we keep feasting. Let me ply my trade, I'll sniff the source. Ned frowned. I'll not dance in shadows. Then stand in light, Littlefinger said softly. But mind that light draws knives. He bowed with mocking grace and slipped away. Dawn bled pearl over the city. In the royal kitchens, Cersei's servants prepared sweet almond cakes and pomegranate wine for the morning council. A single vial of thick, colorless syrup joined the tray destined for Daenerys. Elsewhere, Tyrion bribed a scullion to swap identical decanters. Pour this instead, he instructed, offering a cask of Dornish red. Tell none. Your purse will know gratitude. The boy bowed, eyes wide. Across the bay, Renly Baratheon arrived atop a sleek destrier, Rainbow Guard forming bright wings behind him. He dismounted in the courtyard, greeting Loras Tyrell with an embrace half public, half intimate. How fares the peace? Loras asked. Renly's smile faltered. Aes calm as a summer sea before storms. They entered side by side. In the small council chamber, cedar panels glowed under morning light. Robert slouched at the high chair, eyes bloodshot. Beside him, Daenerys took the seat once held by Stannis. Joffrey sat stonily opposite, fingers drumming. Cersei arrived last, green silk glimmering, Qyburn haunting her wake. Platters of fruit and pastry circulated. Cersei herself poured the wine, first for Daenerys, then for the king. Daenerys lifted her goblet, studying its contents. Ruby liquid trembled. Across the table, Tyrion cleared his throat. "To new beginnings," he declared. Everyone drank, save Daenerys, who merely wet her lips. Minutes dragged through agendas. Grain levies in the Reach, repair of Storm's End's outer wall, the Braavosi loan schedule. Grand Maester Pycelle droned. Robert scratched his beard, half asleep. At length, Cersei leaned forward. "Your Grace," she said to Daenerys, voice sweet. "We have yet to hear your counsel on Dornish tariffs." Daenerys smiled. "Trade flows where trust leads. I propose lowering tariffs on Dornish wines in exchange for garrison rights along the Boneway." Renly blinked. Varys raised brows. Tywin, newly arrived, studied her over steepled fingers. Cersei's lashes fluttered. A bold suggestion. She sipped, eyes on Daenerys' cup. The Targaryen princess drank moderately now, savoring. Cersei's heart thudded. Moments passed. No cough, no pallor. Sweat beaded Cersei's spine beneath silk. Across from her, Tyrion offered a tiny, mocking toast. Outside, bells clanged. Alarm, not celebration. A Lannister guard burst into the chamber. "Fire in Flea Bottom." "Smoke climbs to the gods." Robert lurched up. "Seven hells." "Again?" The guard continued. "Explosions near the old dragon pit." Daenerys stiffened, recalling the Iron Sphere. She stood. "Your city burns, Your Grace." Robert scowled, turning to Joffrey. "Boy, ride with the gold cloaks, show the realm a prince's mettle." Joffrey opened his mouth to protest. Cersei rose, voice sharp. "He will remain safe." Robert rounded on her. "Safe behind skirts? Go." Joffrey bit his lip but obeyed, stalking from the room with Sandor Clegane at his heels. Daenerys followed the king to the balcony. Smoke billowed black from the hillside. Flame licked broken timbers. She caught acrid scent. Somewhere distant, screams carried. Robert cursed. "Pycelle, send healers. Varys, rouse the harbor pumps. Ned, muster city watch." Daenerys spoke low. "Let me go. I have riders swift as wind." He eyed her. "What good are horsemen in stone streets?" "Speed," she replied. He hesitated, then nodded. She turned on slippered feet, rushed down corridors to her guardroom. Jorah waited armored. "Trouble?" he asked. "Sabotage," she said. "We ride." In the yards below, Daenerys swung onto a chestnut courser, Jorah beside her, two blood riders behind. They galloped through thronging courtiers, thundered across the drawbridge and plunged into the city's warren. Folk scattered. Smoke thickened. Flames danced among thatch roofs. They reached the base of Rhaenys' hill. Charred beams blocked the narrow lane. A weeping woman clutched a child, face smeared with ash. Jorah dismounted, hauling beams aside. The blood riders led survivors to clear ground. Daenerys pressed upward on foot. At the dragon pit ruin, stone cracked and smoldered. The shell of the dome sagged, half collapsed. City watchmen formed bucket lines from cistern pools, but water steamed useless on molten debris. Amid rubble lay a gaping crater, the explosion's heart. Daenerys knelt, fingers brushing shattered cobbles. She saw shards of black iron bearing ancient runes. A gust of wind stung her eyes. She stood, fury coiling. They sought to bury dragons again. Nearby, a ragged boy sobbed over a limp dog. She touched his shoulder. He flinched. "Who did this?" she asked softly. Through tears he whispered, "Gold lions. They paid men. Red cloaks." He didn't know. But suspicion flared bright. She rose, gaze sweeping the carnage, then toward the Red Keep looming redder in smoke-hazed light. Back within Maegor's holdfast, Cersei paced her solar, teeth grinding. Qyburn stood silent, bewildered. "She lives," Cersei hissed. "And the streets burn instead." Doors banged. Jaime strode in, dust clinging to his cloak. Word from the pit. Sabotage. Dozens dead. Not her doing. He eyed his sister. "Nor yours, I hope." Cersei stiffened. "I protect our blood. By poisoning guests." His voice chilled. She turned away. "You'll thank me when lions still rule." Tywin entered unannounced. Golden eyes fierce. "Enough. We do not war in shadows like gutter rats. The realm sees everything." He fixed Cersei with a stare that froze her tongue. "Any strike on the dragon now draws kingdoms against us. You'll cease these antics." Cersei opened her mouth. He raised a hand. "We adapt or die." Jaime glanced between them, uneasy. In the throne room, Robert listened as Ned and Renly reported casualty counts. His knuckles whitened on the bastard's word Blackfire, retrieved from its vaults for ceremonial display, and quiet returned. "Who?" he asked. Varys hovered. "The fires speak many tongues, your grace. Yet some claim to have seen cloaked men fleeing toward the Lion Gate." Robert's gaze darkened. "I'll not have my peace shredded by my own in-laws." He slammed the sword onto the dais. Sparks flew. "Summon Tywin. Summon all." He looked to Daenerys as she entered, soot-smudged. "Forgive my city." She inclined her head. "Forgive those who rule it," she answered, voice low. That night, storm clouds converged. Thunder rolled over Blackwater Bay. In her borrowed chambers, Daenerys bathed, scrubbing ash from skin. When she emerged, she found Tyrion seated by the hearth, feet dangling. "A dire hour, princess," he said. "Nothing like debris to reveal foundation cracks." She draped a robe, eyed him. "You warned me at table." "I substituted wine, yes. I dislike poisoned guests. They ruin appetites." She studied him. "Why aid me?" Tyrion shrugged. "Dragons make intriguing friends. And I tire of my sister's theater." He offered a small package. "A gift. Should your eggs hatch, they'll need names sung in every tavern." She unwrapped parchment filled with lyrical verse. Odes to Viserion, Rhaegal, and a blank where a third name should fit. "Choose well," he said. "Stories travel faster than ships." She smiled, despite exhaustion. "Thank you." Across the sea of corridors, Renly and Loras whispered in a candle-lit alcove. "Robert flounders," Renly muttered. "If the people turn on lions, we seize hearts with roses." Loras squeezed his hand. "Margaery stands ready." Renly's eyes gleamed. "A dragon bride for Joffrey leaves the realm needing a second jewel. One less fiery." He kissed Loras' brow. "Our time nears." Far below in the dungeons, the three saboteurs knelt shackled. Ser Barristan interrogated, voice calm yet cutting. "Who sent you?" Silence. He signaled. A jailer brandished tongs glowing red. One man screamed before breaking, "Golden Company! For young Griff!" Barristan frowned. "Griff." The prisoner sobbed. "True dragon blood. He comes." Barristan reported to Robert, unease gnawing. Another claimant, another fire. At Dragonstone, Melisandre stood atop the stone drum, arms raised to the gale. Lightning split cloud, framing her silhouette against red sky. She chanted in tongues older than old Valyria. Below, sailors muttered, crossing themselves. Stannis watched from a parapet. "Davos," he said, "the storm worsens." The smuggler nodded. "Winds shift, my lord. We sail on peril." Stannis' fingers brushed the dagger Daenerys had returned. Yet, course is set. 2 days later, Robert convened a grand assembly in the Dragon Pit ruins. Symbolic, he boasted, rebuilding upon ashes. Nobles gathered under hastily erected silk awnings. Daenerys arrived wearing mail gleaming beneath black velvet, the eggs carried behind by handmaidens. Tywin stood opposite in crimson, flanked by Cersei and Jaime. Rain threatened. Robert mounted a wooden platform, voice booming. "Here, dragons once roared. Here, fear ruled. But we stand united, stag, dragon, lion, and all. cowards struck this place, but courage rebuilds it. Murmurs rippled. Tywin stepped forward. House Lannister condemns the attack. His gaze flicked to Daenerys. We offer funds to restore these venerable stones. Cersei curtsied, smile tight. Robert inclined his head. Daenerys advanced. House Targaryen grieves with the city, she said, voice carrying. We will aid not with coin alone, she signaled. A brazier was brought, iron, filled with glowing coals. The eggs were placed inside. Gasps, Terot. She continued, when dragons return, they will guard this realm, not burn it. She laid her hands upon the coals, unflinching. Flames licked her palms. Crackles echoed. A hush fell. The black-red egg shuddered. A fissure split its shell. A sharp keening pierced the rain-damp air. Light burst, a glow fierce as noon sun. Nobles cried out, stumbling back. The shell crumbled. From the embers rose a hatchling, midnight scales streaked with crimson, eyes molten gold. It spread fragile wings, squealing. Smoke swirled around Daenerys. Her hair streamed, silver in firelight. She lifted the dragon gently. Drogon, she named it, voice soft thunder. Awe swept the pit, followed by terror. Some knelt. Others fled. Robert froze, hammer memories surging. Tywin masked fear behind stoic stone. Cersei's face blanched. The hatchling hissed, tiny tongue flicking sparks. Daenerys cradled it. Ace promised, she declared. Dragons for the realm. Should the realm prove worthy. That night, storm winds battered towers. In the queen's chambers, Cersei confronted Tywin. We strike now, she hissed. Tywin silenced her with a glare. We adapt, he repeated. Dragons fly, so lions hunt other prey. He summoned Maester Kevan, whispered instructions of letters to Dorne and the Iron Islands. Elsewhere, Varys penned missives to distant allies, weighing young Griff's rumor. Renly sharpened swords, eyes alight. Stannis' fleet sailed from Dragonstone under banners bearing a heart aflame. And in the dark of Maegor's holdfast, Daenerys watched Drogon curl around the green bronze and cream gold eggs, warmth seeping into their stone hearts, cracks spidering beneath shell. Firelight danced across her face. A queen wreathed not in crown of gold, but in promise of flame. The wheel groaned on its axle, heavier now. Yet for a heartbeat between thunderclaps, hope and dread balanced. One breath, one blink, before gravity answered, and history spun forward once more.